Hey YouTube! So, let's talk about how to do witchcraft that scares you and how to confront that. Now, as always, there are many different ways to do things. There are many different opinions, many different ways to confront things. Always only do things that you are comfortable with. And again, just my tips and opinions on this channel. So, little mini disclaimer, and now that we're done with that, let's actually get into the video, shall we? So step 1, identify what is actually scaring you, right? If something makes you feel uneasy or weird, why is that? Right, Kitty? Why is that? What scares you? What freaks you out? What makes us nervous? We don't know. And that is so important to figure out. You can do that through journaling. You can do it through meditation. You can do it through asking tarot or oracle, whatever have you. But sometimes it's just easy as ask yourself the question, this scares me. Why? Because when you actually get down to kind of why, then you can do things beyond it. For example, I've always said for years and years and years, and more so on this channel, mirrors freak me out. Mirror magic in any way, shape, or form, as you can tell, there's still some oil on this. They've always scared me. Doing any sort of mirror scrying is a thing. And when I asked why, I was like, why is it that mirrors freak me out? The first thing is this, because when I feel like this looking back is not me, okay? Why does that scare me? Because it feels like a portal. Because it feels like something can get through this. So when I asked other people and stuff, I could then get answers to, okay, so what do I do about that? So there's step 2. 1, figure out why it actually scares you. Keep asking yourself questions till you get the root of the problem of what actually scares you. 2, go, okay, now that I know that, how do I investigate and or research to see how to prevent the thing that scares me? And not so much research in the sense of, like, when I was researching this and I realized that mirrors specifically feel like a portal, I was not looking into research that said why mirrors were not a portal. I was looking into research that said mirrors are a fucking portal. How do I close the portal? So many times fears are irrational. And so to take the irrational and immediately try to then take a rational approach to the irrational, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to sit there still being terrified out of your mind and going, why the hell am I terrified out of my mind about the thing that I logically know shouldn't be scary? Fear and logic don't necessarily go hand in hand. Sometimes it can, but many a time it's a very sidestepped removed from it. So, and then research how to prevent it. Look into what type of protection magic can protect you from it. What type of things have people said, steps that you can do if you are addressing it or confronting it that can just give you a little extra barrier, a little extra oomph, a little extra something to get in your way, right? And do that. Step 3 for doing magic that scares you. Call in something that you feel is grander or bigger than you. So many times I think I'll have to look in to see exactly who said it, but I've heard this quote quite a bit of times, is all fears kind of come down to, we won't be able to handle it. The reason this is scary is because if something does come through this portal, I won't be able to handle it. The reason all these other things, the unknown, whatever, are scary is because if we are faced with something that we don't know about and we can't control it, then we can't handle it. So bring in something that can. There are so many times we think of guides, deities, other spirits, God, the universe, the divine, the all-knowing, whatever you subscribe to. We look at ourselves and don't necessarily think of ourselves as all-powerful, even though next step will be a little bit of addressing of that. Okay, so if we're not all-powerful, but is something else is scarier that's all-powerful? Is there something even more powerful than the thing that's scary? When I was younger, a lot of times when I have nightmares, I used to think of different types of creatures coming up and getting me. Clowns kind of freaked me out for a very long time. A lot of different types of entities seemed to, like, I don't know, creep and crawl and get into me a little bit in my dreams, and I didn't know how to do it. And the best way for me to end up handling it is actually think of, what if I've got something scarier? It's not I'm trying to fight a monster with a non-monster. You're a monster. Well, I got a bigger, scarier monster behind me. It's on my side, damn it. Because that's what I think of, like, when I think of my deities, or I think of other entities being called in, or the universe as a whole. When I'm like, no, I'm calling in all this shit with extra protection, it's because in those moments I don't necessarily feel oomph and empowered in just my own holding. I would call in a boo-boo because it's very loud and it's going to tell me what to do. Right. The next to last step before you're doing magic that scares you is to, I think in some ways, remember how connected everything is. Well, I do sometimes, I don't know, mess with what exactly I subscribe to when I think of how the universe works as a whole. I think it's kind of easy to think of it as we all have the same origin point, and if we all have the same origin point, right, like whether you believe in the Big Bang or some overall creator, what have you, like, so from something, some sort of funnel, the rest of existence in the universe at large had to kind of like create itself, right? Well, from that origin point came the scary thing, and from that origin point came you. You both are connected to that primordial essence. And sometimes the biggest thing that helps me when I'm thinking about magic that kind of terrifies me is remembering that I am connected to that primordial essence as much as it is. Everything it draws its power from itself, from the connection to the source of it all, I also have. So as scary as you think you are, is as scary as I think you are, I myself can be just as scary, if so needed. And then the final thing I say when doing magic that kind of scares you, whether it's facing a certain thing, practicing something you don't necessarily know that much about, what have you, is that so much of our fear comes from just the ignorance of it, from just not knowing, from the fact that we have never experienced it before, or that the small bit that we experienced was negative. But when you fully experience something, when you've had a full-on journey with a thing, there can be times when that scares you, but a lot of times you kind of know it more. If you look at it, you can peel back the layers and see where this element of this wasn't that scary, this element of this wasn't that horrible, this element is different, this element is more complex. When you take back the ignorance of the thing, face it, play with it, greet it openly. How often are you that fearful for that long? When I think of how scary I was to do magic in the beginning, to take my dreams and my visions and daydreams and meditations as something that could be realistic, to acknowledge that some of the signs I was seeing in the mundane world could possibly be more than just coincidence, to look into a mirror and see my face doing a weird melty thing and know that maybe that's not necessarily bad, to see it, to face it right up front. Eventually I realized that, oh, it's not inherently negative. There's a complexity to it. Just as there's a complexity to each of us, to each piece of magic. There's always layers to everything. So within the thing that you are terrified of, if you face it, what good layer is there? What thing have you peeled back to find possibly a little kernel of real joy that you didn't understand before? So if there's some type of magic you've been terrified to do, whether it's scrying with a mirror like me, or using a poppet, or contacting a certain entity and trying to connect and not really knowing what the hell to do, or you're just dabbling into witchcraft for the beginning and you're kind of utterly terrified of it, here are just some tips that, hey, maybe you can face your fears and do it. But also, at the very end of this, I just want to say, there's fear of the unknown. And then there's the vibe in the deep pit of your stomach that says, don't fuck with that. And sometimes we push past that because of pressures from the outside. We think, oh, well, I shouldn't fear anything. No, fear is there for a reason. It's a healthy emotion. It keeps us alive longer. Some things we need to be afraid of. Some things we need to use to then reflect on ourselves and see why things are the way they are. This is not a world without pain or suffering or bad things. That fear is there to keep us a little happier, a little more alive in some respects. So if you get a deep pit in your stomach knowing I shouldn't do something, don't do it. And it can be hard to distinguish that from the two fears, but take some time, maybe try out the tips I've suggested in this video. And if at the end of all that you're still like, nope, then don't do it. Because ultimately, you know what is best for you when it comes to your spiritual journey. in your magical path. This is one of the last videos for Youtober, as tomorrow is Samhain. So I have one more very special video for you guys tomorrow. And if you haven't checked it out and the veil is thinning is something that always excites you, please check out my veil is thin video from last year. And with that, I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you have a very wonderful and magical Samhain if you celebrate. And if you don't, then a very happy Halloween.